I'm going to be your host today. For those of you who are attending the webinar for the first time and you don't know me, my name is Saqib and I'm the product lead at GMATWiz. I'm also the principal architect of the GMATWiz platform. So whatever intelligence that you see in our course, I've been a part of the team that basically created it. Apart from that, I've been in the edtech industry for a long time. It's close to 10 years now. So I believe I'm in a very good position to understand the kind of problems that a student goes through. And I usually try and make sure that since I love teaching quant, apart from creating products, I do take these quant webinars and try and see if I can help you simplify these concepts and ensure that you can solve 700 level questions easily, well within time limit. So that's briefly about me. The webinar, as far as the progression of this webinar is concerned, it's going to follow the same process. I'm going to spend about 60 to 90 minutes, depending on the pace of the webinar, on the main part of the section where I'm going to talk about the different concepts of statistics. And obviously, I'll be taking up certain questions to help you, clear those concepts and help you understand the approach of solving the questions. And I'll keep about 10 minutes at the end if any one of you wants to ask me any questions, any general questions regarding GMAT prep or quant prep or about GMATWiz also, then feel free to ask me anything at the end of the webinar. Okay. Also, one thing is that those of you who are attending this webinar, again, as the first time, if you're not aware, then we have been conducting this as a series of webinars, okay? So we've been doing this from Feb 13, so we have already covered about, I think, 12 webinars already, and we have a few more left. We'll keep on continue doing this till April 18th. So if you haven't attended those webinars, and if you want to, go through the recordings of the previous webinars, I'm sharing the YouTube link with you all. What you can do is, this is the YouTube link of our channel. You can subscribe to it. So whenever we put in any new webinars, you'll get the notification. Okay, and we've also created a playlist for these webinars. So if in case you have missed any of the webinars and you want to go through it, you can definitely look at the older webinars. Okay. And also, if you want us to send remind you of those webinars through your WhatsApp over your phone, so that you can attend these live, which I would highly recommend, so that you can ask any questions. Watching videos is one thing. It's like a passive learning. What I believe is, if you want to interact with, and this is a good chance where you can talk to us and clear any doubts that you have regarding these topics. Okay, so I've shared the registration link also with you all in case you want us to send you notifications, and we won't spam you. We'll just send you notifications about the webinars only, nothing else. Okay. With this, guys, let's get started. And before I start off the webinar on statistics, I would like to know what kind of challenges do you face in statistics, just to get an idea, so that I'll try and see if I can cover those, or at least if there are certain questions like that, I'll put more emphasis on it. So those of you who are already there in the webinar, can you just tell me if you have done statistics? If you haven't, that's okay. But those of you who have done it, what kind of issues do you face in statistics? And I would encourage all of you to participate. There's no right and wrong answer here. Anything that you feel where you might have struggled, feel free to ask, or let me know at least. Okay, Gagan says standard deviation. Okay. Karan, I've shared the YouTube link. Karan is not able to access the previous webinars. On the YouTube link, you'll see a playlist on these GMAT Score Booster webinars. You'll find all the previous webinars in that on that YouTube link. Okay. Okay, Karan, Gagan, both of you are seeing standard deviation. What about anything else apart from standard deviation? Okay, Shruti says generally I face problems related to standard deviations based on data sufficiency question. Okay, Nalin says correlating concepts. Okay, how many of you are comfortable with maximizing, minimizing the numbers when it comes to statistics? Questions where you need to distribute numbers, find out the maximum value, questions that are based on range. Are you comfortable with those kind of questions also? Or where you may need to find out, what the median could be when there's certain variables given. What about those kind of concepts? Okay, Karan says, yes, that is tricky also. Okay. Not tried it yet. Okay. So in my opinion, if you ask my opinion about statistics, I would say there are three basic kind of questions. When I say basic, I mean three types basically. The questions could be difficult. Three types of questions where people do struggle a little bit when it comes to statistics. One obviously are questions related to standard deviation, which most of you have mentioned. The other two type of questions which I feel where students struggle a bit is one questions which are based on medians, where you have a variable in the series of numbers, and sometimes you need to figure out what the median could be. Those kind of questions where you don't know where to place that variable that you have that in the set, where mostly people falter. Third, obviously, is the maximum minimum kind of a question where they'll give you a set, they might give you the median, mean. So there are a number of variations. I'm going to cover one of them in this session, where they might give you just the median, a little bit information about maybe the sum or the mean, and they might ask you to, find out what could be the maximum value, what could be the maximum range, those kind of questions that you need to cover. Okay, so I'll be covering these three types, and in this webinar also what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover the basics also. So those of you who are not aware about what a mean or a median or a range is, then don't worry. I am going to spend about 5-7 minutes in each of these particular concepts. But do keep in mind that these would be at a high level. If you need more, obviously, in-depth knowledge, then you'll have to go and look at the video lessons. Okay, Anmol has a question here, which is after which topic we have to start. So Anmol, frankly, statistics is a pretty independent topic. If you want, you can do statistics at any point of time. In general, the trend is that people, when they're doing their number properties, when they're going through the topics of number properties, they do cover it. But statistics as such is not dependent on any other topic. There could be a mix and match of questions, but those are a very few of them. So 70 to 80% questions are pretty independent. So if you want to do statistics standalone, you can do it anytime that you want it. Okay. Okay, Karan cannot see the link. Karan, I'm resharing the YouTube link. Okay, once again in the chat. One sec, let me share it quickly. Link, and then we'll get started, guys. Just give me one sec. Okay, so those of you who have joined late, the webinars are on this YouTube link. I've shared it in the chat. Hopefully, you should be able to see it now. If you want to go through the previous webinars, please look at this. Go to this channel and look for a GMAT Score Booster playlist. You can go through the previous recordings from there. Okay. Okay, let's get started. So as discussed, the major important topics that you need to know, basic topics, which is like the foundation, is you should be able to understand the basic difference between mean, median, mode, and range. Okay, that's like the very basic thing that you should definitely know. The definitions. The advanced things where mostly people struggle are the ones that I was talking about. Questions based on standard deviation, questions which are based on maxima, minima, and questions where, there are effect of constants. When I say effect of constants, what I mean is that you might get a question like this, and I'm just giving a high-level example. I do have a question which I'm going to cover, where they'll give you a set, and they might tell you, hey, I'm adding +5 to all of them. What would be the new mean, or what would be the new standard deviation, or what would be the new median? Those kind of questions where you add a constant or divide with all the terms with a constant. Those kind of questions are also sometimes slightly tricky, especially when they come in the form of word problems and not purely statistics questions. So those are also that I am going to definitely focus on, and hopefully once you're done with this webinar, you should be able to have a high-level approach, or no, I won't say even high-level, in fact, in-depth approach, I would say. You would know exactly how to approach these kind of questions. Okay, so let's start with means first. So means is something which I think most of us deal with on a day-to-day basis, and mean, average, they all mean the same thing. So when I talk about mean or average, what you really need to do is you add up all the elements and then you divide it by the total number of elements. And I have a few examples, so hopefully you should be able to understand it. Let's say if I have 1, 5, 3, 7, something like this. Let's say I have 4 terms, and I want to find out the mean. Then what you do is you find out the sum of these elements. That is what is the meaning of sum of total elements. So you do 1 plus 5 plus 3 plus 7, that gives you the sum, and you divide by the total number of elements. So how many elements do I have? 1, 2, 3, and 4. I have 4 elements, so I basically divided by 4, and I can find out my mean. Sometimes in GMAT, you'll notice that they might give you the mean and total number of elements. In a lot of questions, these are given, and I've seen people not finding out the sum. Now, this formula that you have here, mean is equal to sum upon total number of elements, which I usually write it as n, then you can find out the sum by taking this to the other side and say that this is basically mean times the number of term. Okay, so it's the same thing. Even if you remember the first formula, you can obviously cross multiply and get the answer, but you need to use it whenever you are given the total number of terms and mean to find out the sum. Okay, uh, these are very basic questions, and I'll give you about 1.5 minutes to do it. So based on these two formulas, can you tell me what would be the answer of this question? What would be the value of x in this case? And let me bring up the options. In fact, let me bring up the poll. Don't put your answers in the chat box. I'm adding a poll. Hopefully you can see it. Pretty easy, but I think this should help you warm up. And so you have 1.5 minutes to solve and mark your answer in the poll. Okay, I'm about to end the poll now. So those of you who haven't put in your responses, I would request you to kindly do so quickly. Okay, great. So I can see most of you got this correct. So let me very quickly tell you how you need to solve this question. As you can see, you are given some elements, some numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers. So when you're given 6 numbers and you're given the mean as 7, you can use the first formula or the second formula. Either one of them is fine. You can say mean is equal to sum of the elements or sum of terms by total number of terms. Okay, you can use this formula. Now, how many terms do I have? I have 6 terms, so I'll write below 6. Sum of terms basically mean you add all this up. So 2 plus 5 plus 9 plus 7 plus x plus 10. And this has been given as, the mean has been given as 7. So put this as 7. Okay, it's as simple as that. And you'll find such questions, easy questions in the official guide also. So you basically do 6 times 7 is 42. If you add this up, 2 plus 7, 16, 23, 33. So 33 plus x. And then you can say x is basically 42 minus 33, which is equal to 9. Okay. So the answer in this case is going to be option D. So that's how easy it is, at least these kind of basic questions. If you get a 500, 550 level question, then they would be as simple as that. Slight variation of these kind of questions, sample one would be this. So if you want, you can take a shot at this one too. This I would say is close to a 600 level, but it's still an easy question. And then we can do a difficult one post this. Okay, another 30 seconds and I'm going to end the poll. Once again, keep in mind, if it's a question of mean, you just have to use that same formula. As long as you're using that formula, you should be able to solve these questions. There's a small mistake which people do make in these kind of questions. So I'm going to highlight it. But yeah, let me end the poll now. I think I've got enough responses. So good thing is that most of you got it correct. Some of you have marked the answer as A and B. So I want to talk about in this question, first of all, I would say a small mistake, a common mistake, which a few students do make. Thankfully, that option is not given in this question. So you might have been spared of this. So sometimes students read this question, they see, okay, the average weight of a class of 15 students is 48. They look at this, they say, okay, this is the average. A new student whose weight is 32 kgs joins the class, and I need to find out the new average weight. Now, common mistake people do is they think, okay, 48 is already the average. A new student is joining, so let me put 32. and let me divide this by 2. Okay, and some people end up saying 80 by 2 or 40. Thankfully 40 is not there in the option. So if any one of you was trying this, please keep in mind this is wrong, this is incorrect. You cannot just take the average, okay, add an actual entity to it, and then divide it by 2. Always remember the formula. If you're looking for the new average, if you're looking for the new mean, okay, you always need to find out the sum, and you always need to divide it by the total elements. That's the main thing that you have to always do. Okay, now if a student is joins the class, there are already 15 students. If a student is joining the class, then that the total number of terms is pretty clear. It has to be 16. There were 15 people, one person joined 16, but you don't know the sum of the weights. Okay, how do you find out that? How do you find that? Think in this way. You already know that the mean is 15. So let's use this formula once again and say mean is 15. You don't know the sum. Oh, sorry. The mean is 48. My bad. The mean is 48. I don't know the sum, and the total number of terms are 50. Okay. So from here, I can find out my sum as 48 times 15, right? Again, I'm not going to solve it. I'm going to keep it as is. If I need to, I'll solve it later on. This was the sum for these 15 people. Now a new person has joined whose weight is 32. You can say the new sum of weights is going to be 48 times 15 plus 32. This is the total sum, the current sum. So if you want to find out the mean, now you take this and then you divide it by 16. So please don't make the mistake of doing 48 plus 32 by 2 in any of the questions. I have seen a lot of queries regarding this. This is incorrect. I hope now you understand why it is. Now, as far as simplifying is concerned, I would break it down. That's usually what I do because I find this much more easy. 45. And I can say my answer is option C. Okay. Please let me know if you have any questions here. Yes, Karan, you can use the weight distribution method also to solve the question. No problem at all. You can definitely do that. But apart from this, any other questions? I hope this is perfectly clear, an easy one, but a small common mistake which I really wanted to highlight. So if this is clear, please mark yes. Okay, great. Okay. Now let's increase the difficulty level a bit. I can see a few people are saying no. If there's any doubt, please guys feel free to ask. I'll be more than happy to answer. In the meantime, you can start off with this question. And let me bring up the poll. Here's the poll, guys. Okay, I'm going to clear the poll now, guys. If there's anyone else who would want to put in a response, please do so. Okay. So I have a pretty mixed response so far. Some of you think the answer so almost equal for B, C, and E. Some of you think it's 18, some 23, some 31.5. Though the question might seem difficult because obviously there are variables involved in this question. Believe me, while solving this question, if you follow just the process of and just one formula which I told you, that mean is equal to sum upon the number of terms, and you set up your equations properly, then ideally you should be able to get the answer very quickly without any issues. And let me show you how. See, as far as the question stem is concerned, as usual, as I've told you in the previous webinars, it's best to break it down into small pieces. Read the information, try and jot down whatever equation that you can form, and then you should read the next part of the question stem. Do not read the question stem in one go, especially with a big question stem. Okay, that's my advice. I usually don't do that. So let's get started. Let's see how I would have done it. So it's given that in January, the average weight of monkeys in a certain zoo is k kg. So average weight, they're talking about weight and they're telling me the average is k. So current average is k. Okay. Now notice after that, it's saying a new monkey of weight 34 kg was brought to the zoo. Okay, a new monkey was bought. with a weight of 34 kg. So if you want to write new monkey 34 kg, something like this, write it down. And the average weight, okay, so the average weight of the monkey is increased by 1. Okay, so once this monkey is bought, the new average becomes k plus 1 because it increases by 1. Okay, now notice one thing, that so far I haven't been given the total number of monkeys, the initially how many monkeys were there. If I write it as average initial, I don't know how many total monkeys were there. Okay, the number of monkeys I don't know initially. So let's take the total number of monkeys as say t. Okay, so if the average initial weight is k and the number of monkeys are t, can I say that the total weight is going to be, I'm again using this formula, and I can say sum of weights is basically mean multiplied by n. So mean is this, total number of monkeys is t. So I can say it's basically k times t. That's the total weight. And when I say total weight, I'm talking till this portion. Okay, I'm talking till this portion before the monkey was added. Okay, now when the monkey is added, the new weight is going to be, the weight was already k times t, and I'm adding 34 to it. So my new weight is this. Okay, so my new sum is this, k t plus 34. This must be equal to the new average, the new mean. And how many people do I have now? How many monkeys do I have? Previously I had t monkeys. Now I'll have t plus 1. Okay, and I can solve this very quickly. If I multiply it, I'll get kt plus k plus t plus 1. So from here, I'm getting my first equation, k plus t is equal to 33. That's my first equation. Okay, so I've used everything till here. This portion I've created this. I've got my first equation. Now let's read further. In Feb, okay, this was in Jan. 1 was added. In Feb, 2 more monkeys were also added. Okay, 2 more. Keep in mind, this is additional from the 1 that was already added before. And these 2 monkeys have a weight of 24 kgs and 32 kgs. Okay, so in Feb, what's going to happen is, see, the initial weight was kt. Now the new weight is going to be kt plus this previous monkey which was there, plus these 2 monkeys, which adds up to the total 24 plus 32 is 56. Okay, so kt plus 90. This is the new weight. How many people do I have now? How many monkeys do I have now? My bad, not so that would be t plus 3, right? Because now there are total 3 monkeys. And they're telling me when these 2 new monkeys are added, the average weight of the monkeys further increased by 1 kg. Further increased. So it was k plus 1, and now it further increased, and now the new average is k plus 2. So once again, I can set up an equation. I can say the sum kt plus 90, and I'm again using this formula, nothing else, is equal to the mean, which is k plus 2, and the number of monkeys, which is t plus 3. And I'll get kt plus 90 is equal to kt plus 3k plus 2t plus 6. So in the end, I can get my second equation, which is 3t plus 3k, my bad, 3k plus 2t is equal to 84, and that's my second equation. So see, now I have my 2 equations, and I want the value of k. I'm looking for k. So if I'm looking for k, I need to eliminate t. There's 2t here. What I can do is I can multiply the first equation by 2, get 2k plus 2t is equal to 66. Okay, and then I can solve it like this. 3k plus 2t is 84. 2k plus 2t is 66. And you simply cancel it out. So k is equal to 18. Okay, so notice in case of mean, most of the questions, if they are not maximum minima based, you only need to use just one formula. Make sure that you keep on setting up equations properly. The second learning out here that you need to keep in mind is that if a variable is not given, like in this case, I don't have the number of monkeys. So take it as something, take it as n, take it as t, whatever you need to take it, but take some variable so that you are able to set up the equation. If you don't take any variable for the number of monkeys, then you won't be able to set up these equations that I've shown here. Please let me know if this is clear or not. I've been doing a monologue for a long time to explain you this. I don't see any question on the chat box. So if this is clear, please mark yes. Okay, I can see it's clear to everyone. If there's any doubt at all, please feel free to ask. Karan, this is a very common question where people ask, why can't I solve a question within 2 minutes? And I've given this answer time and again. Please understand, if the question is difficult, GMAT doesn't expect you to solve each question in 2 minutes. They don't. Okay. And you don't always have a shortcut for each and every question. There's a number distribution method. If you want to use that method, you can use that. You can still solve this question using number distribution, but that is even lengthier, slightly more conceptual, slightly more lengthy. That is why I'm not going into it. If you're interested in learning the number distribution method, you can learn the number distribution method if you go to the statistics video lesson 1. There I've taught the number distribution method. If you want to solve this question using that, you can. But believe me, even that would take some amount of time to solve it, because I have a variable k. If this would have been a number now, some value given like 36, 35, 38, some value, then I would have used a number distribution method to solve this question. But even that is conceptual. I know people do end up making a mistake. That is why I'm not going into it. And frankly, I'm explaining it to you. That is why it is taking slightly more time for me to show this. If the concept is clear, it should not take you more than 2.5 minutes to solve this question. And that is perfectly okay. Believe me, the average time to solve such questions is close to 2.5 minutes. Okay, I don't see any other questions. So let's look at the median a bit, because most of the questions that you'll get in GMAT would mostly be a mix of mean, median, and range. So it makes sense to first of all understand median in detail first. Especially there are tabular questions on medians, which are quite important, and you should know how to read them also. So I'll cover both these concepts briefly. Now, as far as medians are concerned, the way to find the median is pretty easy. You will be given a set of numbers. What you need to do is you need to arrange them in ascending or descending order. In fact, let me bring up these steps first and then show it to you. That would be easy. Let's say I have these terms 1, 7, 9, 5, say 2. Okay, I'm going to explain each and every step to you. So what you do is the first step is to arrange them in a ascending order. Let's say you can write it as 1, 2, 5, 7, 9. Okay, so arrange it. That's your step 1. Step 2 is you see how many data points you have. So in this case, I have 5 data points. So n is equal to 5. Okay. So this is an odd number of terms. I have 5 terms. And if they are odd number of terms, and if you want to find out the median, then the median is nothing but the term which is n plus 1th by 2, n plus 1 by 2. So you've put 5 here, and you'll notice that you're getting 3, right? So you'll say that the third term in the sequence, is going to be a median. So in this case, the median is going to be 5. So the concept of median is simple. You just need to find out the middle term. That's all. Okay. Now you may get a question which has, say, for example, have another term. Let's say 10. So once you arrange it, you'll get 6 terms, right? So total number of terms is now even. If you're in a situation where the total number of terms is even, then first of all, find out n by 2. Because even is, you can easily divide it by 2. Okay, so the median is basically the average of the third, and notice n by 2 plus 1th term. So basically 6 by 2 plus 1. So it is the average of the third and the fourth term. So you'll go to the third and the fourth term. You'll take their average, which is going to be 12. The sum is 12, and you divide by 2, and you'll say that the median of this set is going to be 6. Okay, so I hope it's clear as far as the finding the median is concerned. If it's an odd number of term, you just take the middle term. You find n plus 1th by 2, how much that is, and you go to that particular term, and whatever that term is, that becomes your median. If there are even number of terms, you simply find n by 2. Take that term and the term which is next to it. Like, so in this case, I take the fifth, I take the third and the fourth term, which is 5 and 7, and then I find the average of it. Okay, this way we can find out the median of any series. If this part is clear, then let's try out one or two basic questions. In fact, the second question that I have for this one is pretty interesting one, but let's do a first an easy question. Can you tell me what would be the median in this case? Let me bring up the poll quickly. If you've understood the concept, you should be able to do this quickly. What is going to be the median of this set? Okay, I'll give you another 10 seconds. This is pretty easy. Just follow the 2 steps and you should be able to get your answer in 30 seconds. Should not take more than that. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. So most of you have marked the correct answer. You have said the answer would be C, and that's correct. Here also notice that the terms are not arranged. So your first step should always be to arrange them. So you'll write it as 2. I think the next is 5, 7, 9, 10, 11, 13. Then count the number of terms 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So your number of terms n is 7, which is odd. So to find out which term would be your median, you find out n plus 1 by 2, which in this case would be 4, right? 8 by 2 is 4. So the fourth term is going to be your median. And the fourth term in this case is 9. So the correct answer. Okay, another 30 seconds and I'm going to end the poll. X can be anything, Rohan. Okay, I've been told it could be a non-integer, it could be a negative number, it could be a positive number, it could be a fraction. Anything is possible. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. The good thing is, and I'm happy to see that most of you, a good chunk of you got the question correct. The answer, in fact, in this case is C. Some of you fell for the trap and marked the answer as E in this case. Let me explain why E won't be the answer. So obviously the first thing which you do is you forget about X for a moment and you just arrange the terms that you already have. So you write 1, you say 8, 8, 8, 9. You don't know where X is. X could be here, 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 anywhere. You don't know where X is, okay? As simple as that. But you see how many terms do you have. That's one thing that you need to do. Keep in mind that X, I need to place X somewhere and you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So in this case, again, n is 7. So I know I need to find out the fourth term. So for this question also, I'm looking for the fourth term. Now, what you do is you start thinking, you start making cases and you start thinking, okay, where can X be? Okay, and the easiest case would be to, let's say if I put X at the extremes, okay, I don't know what X is, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to think and say, okay, what happens if I place X at the extreme ends? Now, if I place X at the extreme end, like let's say if I put it here, then I'll say my fourth term is going to be 8, right? This is my fourth term. So in case 1, the median is 8, okay? Now, if I put X here, say for example, okay, in the starting, at the starting, then what's going to happen is my fourth term, 1, 2, 3, 4, is still going to be 8. Okay, and in fact, it does not matter even if you take a case, you know, where you try to put it somewhere in between. It won't change anything. Let's say if you put 1, 1, you put X here, you put these 3 terms. Again, the fourth term is going to end up being 8 only. Even if you put it here, does not matter. The fourth term is still going to be 8. Okay, so the placement of X is not changing the answer at all. And therefore, you can say that the correct answer in this is going to be option C. I hope it's clear. So this is how you need to place and check whether your median is changing or not. If your median is not changing, then obviously you can get your answer. If your median is changing, then you'll end up marking the answer as option E. Okay, any doubts, anyone? Yeah, Amna, this is a good question. Frankly, it's a good question to clear your understanding regarding questions where you need to deal with variables and find out the median. Okay, please feel free to ask any questions, guys. Then if there are no questions, then I can move on to the next one. There's another important concept which I would like to cover here is, as I told you, about tables. Now, I'm going to give you an example. Let me, in fact, bring this up first and show you what do I mean by a table. Now, focus on this first, okay? Focus on this part. Now, if I have to find the median of this set, what am I going to do? I'm going to count the number of terms out. I'll say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. I'll say my n is 19. So my median, if I want to find out which term is going to be, I'm going to do this because it's an odd number of term. So 19 plus 1 is 20, 20 by 2 is 10. So I'll say my 10th term is going to be my median. Now, what is your 10th term in this case? You again start counting from the left. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you end up saying that your median is 10. Your median is 4. Okay, the 10th term is 4, so your median is 4. Okay. Now, what you're basically doing here is you're first of all, again, I want you to focus on the methodology. You're first of all finding out total terms. How many terms do you have? You then find out which term, the main part is which term is going to be your median, and then you go to that particular term. You go to that particular data point. Okay, focus on these three aspects. Why I'm saying this is because they might give you this same information in the form of a table as I'm showing here. Notice how many ones do you have? You have 3 ones. So they might tell you, okay, the number 1 is occurring 3 times. The number 3 is occurring 5 times. The number 4, it occurs 2 times. The number 5, it occurs 3. So you get the idea, right? So the same information, instead of putting in a big list like this, set like this, they might give you the same information in the form of a table. And you need to kind of be able to visualize it, that this table that is given is nothing but a different way of representing the same set. Okay. Now, what did you do here? You found out the total number of terms. And how can you find out the total number of terms? You can simply say, okay, if 1 is occurring 3 times, this is occurring 5 times, then the total number of terms is simply going to be the sum of this. Okay. And you can add it up. So you'll get n is 19. You know, to find out the median, you need to find out which term. And since n is 19, the median is going to be 19 plus 1 by 2. So you're looking for the 10th term. And where is your 10th term? That is what you need to understand. See, till here, since there are 3 occurrences, you have your first term, second term, and third term here. Okay. Where is your 4th term? Your 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. Okay. Term is still here. So 3 plus 5, 8. Okay. You're looking for the 10th term. So your 9th and 10th. Obviously, you don't have to do manually. I'm doing this to show it to you so that you can understand. So you figure out that the 10th term is going to occur here. The 10th term is present here. And what is that particular data point? Which point is at the 10th term? This point is at the 10th term. So you'll say that the median is going to be 4. So in the exam, let's say if you end up, and I'm giving you a hypothetical situation so that you don't have to write it every time. You find out that after solving everything, you find that your median is going to be, say, the 12th term, say. Okay. So what you do is you start counting where is 12. So you'll do 3 plus 5, 8, 8 plus 2, 10, and 10 plus 3 is 13. So you'll stop here. You'll say, okay, 10th is here, 13th is here. So the 11th and 12th, the 12th term belongs here. If the 12th term belongs here, which term is that? That term is 5. So in this case, your median will turn out to be 5. Please let me know if this is clear or not, guys, because this is where I've seen a few people end up making a mistake. So I hope you understand now what this table means. And if you get a table like this, you'll be able to visualize it easily, because there you'll find 1 or 2 questions like this in the official guide also. In fact, in GMAT prep questions, also in the mocks, also I've seen these questions. Okay, I can see that it's clear to everyone, which is good, perfect. So if this is clear, guys, let's do a very quick and easy question. Try this one. This is an easy one, so I'm going to give you 1.5 minutes only for this one. Okay. Nalin, if you're talking about the previous question, then that was a 650 level question. If you're talking about the X question, I just noticed your chat. Okay. response, please do so quickly. Okay, so most of you have got the correct answer, I think so. So we put the answer as C100. So let's look at it quickly. So here you can notice the net wealth is given, okay, and the number of millionaires. So this also kind of gives you a hint, okay, number of millionaires. So if I'm saying net wealth 50 and there are 200 number of millionaires, that means you can write this 50 200 times. So you have to visualize it. You can visualize it like this: 200 times 50, then 160 times 100, so on and so forth. Again, not needed, but I'm just telling you. What you need to do is you need to find out the sum. So what you can do is you can start adding. This would be 260, 330, 370, 400, 450, 465. Okay, so once you get the sum, you see the number of terms, the number of millionaires as 465. So if you want to find out which term is going to be a median, you do 465 plus 1 by 2, okay, which gives you 233. So your 233rd term is your median, and you just need to go and figure out where your 233rd term is. So the 200 terms are here. The moment you come here, it becomes 260, and this is 200. So you know your 233rd term lies in this row. And what row is that? It's a row where the net wealth is 100 million. So you'll say your median is going to be option C. It's as easy as this, nothing else. Okay. Any questions, anyone, please feel free to ask. I can see a question which says, is it the same type of questions with get in IR? So in IR, you may get questions like these, but not exactly like the one that I'm showing you. This kind of question you can definitely get in the actual quant section, because I have seen these kind of questions come in GMAT prep mocks, also in the actual exam also. You'll see this question in the official guide also. Yes, Amna, you'll see you can expect statistical questions in data sufficiency as well, and I'm going to show you a few questions on that. Okay, so this one's clear. I think it's easy. So let's go to the and the most interesting thing now will start, because these two are still on the slightly easier level. Now is where when you start learning the mode and the range, then the question difficulty level increases. Okay, so the concept of mode is pretty easy. Frankly, mode doesn't come a lot. You might see very rarely in one question or two questions, not more than that. And whenever GMAT tests you also on mode, they usually test you on what we usually call as a uni mode, where one particular term occurs the maximum number of times. So you basically see which term is occurring the most number of times. So if you look at this set, you see that 7 occurs the most. It occurs twice. So you'll simply end up saying that the mode is 7 in this case, as simple as that. Okay. There are things like multi-mode also, and there's a concept also of no mode, but I don't think you'll I should not say I don't think. I haven't seen questions like this on the GMAT. Multi-mode basically means where you can have more than one mode. Like in this case, 9 is occurring also 2 times, 7 is occurring also 2 times. So you'll end up saying the mode in this case is 7, 9. But you will not be facing this. I'm just telling you that there are cases like these also. No mode means that each of the term is occurring once. So in this case, there would be no mode as such. So you cannot be asked to ask a question on mode whenever there's a situation of no mode. So this is the one that you'll be tested on, uni mode. Okay. The concept of range is pretty simple. Range means basically you first of all look at the set that is given to you. Okay, whatever that set is, you take the smallest term, you take the highest term, and then you simply find the difference. Okay, so the greatest minus smallest, that is all you need to do. So if you're given the same set which I've written here, you look at the smallest term, which is 2 in this case, you take the highest term, which is 13 in this case, and you end up saying that the range is going to be highest minus the greatest minus the smallest, which is 11. So concept wise, it's pretty simple. The question that can come can be very conceptual in such cases. Okay, so I'm going to show you one such question. Here's the one, as you can see on the screen, which is based on mode. And frankly, this is an official question. Ashish, you'll see range. I'll show you range questions. I think the fourth question is based on range. If you're saying what is the point of range, the range basically tells you how spread out the data is. If you want to understand from the perspective of stats. how far or how wide is the data. Okay, so if I say the range is 2 and the range is 9 and the range is 99, then that means set 1 has range 2 and set 2 has range 99, say for example, then I can say the set 2 is more spread out. Okay. Let me. Pratiksha, yes, I'm going to explain this question. Don't worry. I'm just waiting for people to try it out. And then I'm going to explain the question as well as the solution. Guys, you have another 30 seconds. Those of you are still solving, you have 30 seconds. Then I'm going to end the poll post that. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, so 57% of you think that the answer should be A, but I have a few of you who ended up marking the answer as C also. 25% in fact of you think that you need both the information to solve this question. So let's see what is the correct answer. Is it A or C? This question again may seem difficult, but what you need to do is you need to spend some time visualizing it properly. Okay, what it's basically saying is there's a certain list S that contains a total of P integers. So there's a list, okay, of numbers. Okay, how many numbers do you have? You don't know exactly. You just know that this list consists of P integers. Okay, so it could be 5 integers, 10 integers, 15 integers. You have no clue at all. Okay. The other thing that it's mentioning is that not necessarily distinct. So obviously there could be terms could be the same. So for example, you could have a list like this: 1, 1, 5, 7, 7, 9, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So there could be terms which could be same also. Okay. The important part that you need to read and understand here is that the list consists of P integers, not necessarily distinct, and this part that are arranged in increasing order. So this list is actually in an increasing order. It's not like a haphazard list, a few lists which I have shown you before. It's not like this, for example. It is properly arranged in an increasing order, and it could have terms which are the same also. Okay, so I hope at least this part is easy to understand and you can visualize it properly. Now it's saying that if S1 is the list consisting of the first P1 integers in S, so I'm creating another list. Okay, this list is S1 and it contains the list of first P1 integers. Again, I don't know how many integers are this. They're just telling me I'm taking a certain number of integers from the list and I'm putting it into S1. Okay. And there are P1 terms here, P1 integers in this one. So I'm giving you an example so that you know people can visualize it properly. Let's say if P is 10. Okay, let's think of P is 10. Then what I'm saying is if S has 10 terms, I'm creating a set. Again, this is a hypothetical situation where P1, and P1 could be anything, but I'm just showing you an example where maybe I'm just taking 4 terms out of it. Okay, I'm taking 4 terms from this set and I'm putting it here. Okay, it consists of the first P1 integers in S. And I'm taking from the starting, by the way, okay? First P1 integers. And there's a list 2 also, set 2, that consists of the last P2 integers. So whatever is the last P2 integers, okay, this is P1 number of integers which I took, and I'm taking P2. And notice one thing, I don't know what this P2 is. They're just saying last P2. Some of you might assume that if P1 is 4, then P2 might be 6. Please don't do that. Don't think that if this is 4, then the remaining is in S2. The question does not say it like this. If the question would have said if S1 consists of the first P1 integers and S2 contains the remaining integers, then if you would have taken 4 here, then the remaining would have been 6. But they're just saying that S2 is the list consisting of last P2 integers. So whatever is at the last P2 integers, it's quite possible that I might just take 3 terms out of it. Okay, P2 could just be 3. I have taken out 3 terms out of this one. Okay. So for S1, I took the first 4 terms, and for S2, I might have taken 3 terms, and I did not take maybe the remaining 3. It's quite possible. Okay, the question does not tell me whether I'm taking both of them. Please let me know till this part whether this part is clear or not, because then post that I'll move further and explain. Is this part clear, everyone? That P1 and P2 could be any value. I don't know what that value is. It could be 4, 3, it could be 5, 5, it could be 6, 4, it could be less, it could be more. I have no clue at all. I'll talk about the answers, guys. Don't worry whether it's A or C. I'm going to let you know. Okay. Aditya, that's a very good question. Quite possible. We don't know. It's quite possible that I might take the first 5 terms, and then for P2, I might end up taking the last 6 terms. Quite possible. So what you're asking is a very valid question. Okay. So I can see it's clear to everyone. So let's take the first state. Okay, let's see what is being asked. I need to figure out whether 9 is the mode of S or not. So for this set S, I need to figure out whether the mode is 9. So maximum number of terms is 9 or not, frequency of the term 9. Okay. Now this statement says that 9 is the mode of S1. So for S1, the mode is 9. So hypothetically speaking, let's say if I've taken 4 terms, okay, that means there are at least maybe say, and again, these are hypothetical scenarios. There could be other cases also. I'm just showing you one case. Okay, let's say it could be something like this, 1399. Okay, just an example. So the mode obviously of S1 would be 9. Okay, and 9 is also the mode of S2. So the good part is the mode of S2 is also 9. So maybe, just maybe, again, a hypothetical scenario, I could have something like this, 9, 9, 10. Okay, but I don't know whether P is equal to P1 plus P2 or not. I don't know whether P1 plus P2 is greater, less, equal to. In fact, I don't know that. So what I need to do is figure out, will my answer change if P1 is not equal to P2? Will it change? Like in this case, see, P1 plus P2 is not equal to P, right? It's 4 plus 3 is 7. Will my answer change? That's a question I need to answer. Now think about it. Now if I have 1399, okay, 4 terms here, 9, 10 in at the end, okay, what would be these 3 terms that I have left out here? What would be these 3 terms? Can anyone tell me? What values will these take? Or can we figure that out also or not? You can say, hey, I cannot figure it out, or we cannot find that out. You can simply say that, not a problem. And if you can find it out, what values would that be? Very good. That's the main part that I'm looking for. That is why you need to keep this in mind, that they are in increasing order. This part is very important. If it is in increasing order and the P1 has 9 in it, P2 also has 9 in it, then obviously the middle terms that are left have to be 9. They cannot be anything else, because I'm setting up the setting the set in the increasing order. So if it's 1399, okay, and the last 3 terms are 9, 9, 10, say for example, then whatever is in the middle, if there is anything in the middle, we don't need to worry about it. They also have to be 9. They cannot be 8. They cannot be 11. Not possible, because I have to write them in increasing order. So if P1 is not equal to P, if P1 plus P2 is not equal to P also, then that's not a problem, because whatever is left out, okay, is still going to be 9 only. So ultimately the mode effectively will still be 9. Okay, and if P1 is equal to P2, then also that's a no-brainer. Let's say if this is P1 is equal to P2 also, okay, let's say I take 5 and 5 terms, though that's one which is very easy to understand. Okay, let's say I have 1399, and let's say I have let me take something else. Let's say something like this. This is 5 terms. This is 5 terms. Okay, even if I combine both of them, I can clearly see that there are 5. The number of, obviously the occurrences of 9 is going to be the maximum. Okay, so if P1 is equal to P2, I'll definitely get 9 as the mode. If P1 is not equal to P2 also, then also my mode is going to be 9. So statement 1 in this case clearly tells me that the mode of S is also 9, and hence this is sufficient. So the second statement was actually a trap. Some of you who marked the answer as C fell for the C trap that was set here. You thought that this information is actually necessary, which it is not. Okay, please let me know if this is clear or not. If there are any doubts, please ask. Hopefully it should be clear. So you can see it's a very basic concept, like, mode. People might think what can be asked in mode, but these are the kind of questions where they'll ask where you just need to check small minor cases to get the answer, nothing else. Utsav, I'm taking the last as P2. Okay, so I don't have to worry about anything that would be greater than 9. Read set 2. Set 2 is basically consisting of the last P2. And for the last P2 also the mode is 9. If for the last P2 also the mode is 9, then obviously there would not be anything. There could be anything greater than 9, but they won't be abundant in number. Like notice I took a case, right? I took a case where I have something more than 9, but that cannot be the mode because I'm very clearly told that for the mode for S2 is also 9, and these are the last P2 integers. There's nothing beyond that. Okay. Yes, Ron, this is a C-trap question where you might, if you don't do this a little bit of analysis, you may end up thinking that the answer would be C and simply move on. Okay, guys, I'm moving on to the next one then. Try out this one. Once again, this is a question based on variable. Ashish, this was a 700 level question, the one that you did now. We have added the poll, and you have 2.5 minutes to do this one. Okay, so I think people are confused between A and E. Some of you think the answer should be A, and some of you think it should be E. Once again, I'll follow the same process which I followed in the question which I discussed. Second question, if you remember, which I discussed about median. I'm going to follow the same logic out here also. Okay, I will, and you'll notice that if you follow that properly, you can very easily get the answers for such questions. Step one is what? Whenever you see a set and you see that it's given, find out the median of the list, you arrange it. Forget about the variable for the moment, and then arrange everything that you have. So you have 1, 3, I can see 5, then 9, 11, 13, 15, 17. Okay, this is my list. I don't know where to put n. N could be anywhere, here, 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 I don't know. The second thing which I would do is count. Obviously, step 2 would be to count the number of terms. So how many terms do I have? 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. So I have n is equal to 9. So if I want to find out the median, I need to figure out which term it would be. Since n is odd, I'll do n plus 1 by 2th. I'll put 9 plus 1 by 2. And I'll say that the median is going to be the 5th term. Okay. Now, once again, since I don't know n, I don't know what's going to happen. You know, n could be here. It's an integer, but what kind of integer, I don't know. It could be 0. You know, if I put 0 here, then the 5th term is going to be what? 3 to 5. Then the median would be 9. If n is somewhere else, say, for example, n is somewhere out here, okay, then in this case 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then in that case your median would become 11, and you can see you're getting different answers. So before moving to the statement, you can just try out these things the way we did in the previous to previous questions. Try out and see whether you're getting different answers or not. Okay, so you can see you're getting different answers based on where you're placing it. Okay, now since you cannot do anything else, you move to the first statement, keeping in mind that the median could be 9, 11 or anything. The first statement says that n is less than 10. Okay, it's an integer. If it is less than 10, then obviously I have to place it somewhere here. Okay, but where do I place it? If it is less than 10, there could be a case. Case 1 would be that n is basically 9. Okay, n is basically 9. So I'm putting it here. Okay, 11, 13, 15, 17. In this case, the median obviously is going to be the 5th term. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In this case, you can see that your median is 9. Okay. Case 2 could be that n is less than 9. Okay. Now, when n is less than 9, n could be anywhere, does not matter. N could be here, n could be here, n could be here, n could be here. Okay. And the answer won't change wherever you place it. Let's say I place it here, okay, for a moment. Notice the 5th term is going to be still 9 only, nothing else. And wherever you place it does not matter. Even if you place it here, it won't matter because the number of terms below 9 is always going to remain 4 only. Okay, so it does not matter where you place it. If you're saying n is less than 9, then you can place it anywhere you want. The number of terms would always be 4 here below 9. So the median in this case also would be 9. So even both the two different cases, the result is still the same. That is why you can say that this statement is sufficient because it is clearly telling you, giving you a unique answer. Please let me know if this is clear or not. Let me bring up the poll quickly. If this is clear, please mark yes, guys. Notice I'm just following the same procedure, nothing else. I'm trying to place it and I'm trying to visualize it. What could be the median, nothing else. This is what you need to do to get these answers. I can see one or two of you are saying that you did not understand it. Please ask question, guys. Ask now before I move on to the next statement. Okay, I don't see any questions, so I'm ending the poll and I'm moving to the second statement. Second statement is actually pretty easy. If you look at the second statement, it's, in fact, let me first of all very quickly write this down. 1, 3, 5, 9, 11, 13, 15, and 17, okay? Now they're saying the range is 16. This is how range, the question of range is used. So the concept of range is used. If range is 16, then that means the highest minus the smallest is 16. Now notice carefully, in this case, if I keep n just like this, okay, I don't know where to put it, but whatever I have from here, I can clearly notice that 17 minus 1 gives me 16, right? So I can say that the smallest term would be 1. The highest term has to be 17. Okay, there's no other possibility. If I put, let's say, for example, n is equal to, say, 18 for a moment, okay? Those of you are wondering why nothing else can come, think about it. If I put 18 here, what's going to happen is that the range would become 18 minus 170, and that's not possible. So n cannot be greater than 17. N could be 17. That's not a problem. Just to let you know, just to clarify, n could be 17, but it cannot be greater than 17. Same like that, n could be 1, but if I put n as 0, then my range would become 17 minus 0, which is equal to 0, which is equal to 17, and that's not possible. I need the range to be 16. So I can say, okay, 17 minus 1 is the range. Now, where do I put n? Notice I did my pre-analysis, right? And during my pre-analysis, I realized if I place n somewhere here, I don't know where to place it. If I place it somewhere here, then my median turns out to be 9. Right? Because the fifth term, because I remember, let me go back a bit. Remember, the median is the fifth term. So my fifth term is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Median is going to be 9. But if my n turns out to be somewhere here, let's say here, it's here somewhere. Okay, you can put it anywhere. I'm just putting it here. Your fifth term, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, becomes this. So your median changes. And since you don't know where exactly to put n, should I put it here or should I put it here? Since you don't know that, you cannot find out a unique answer. And you cannot find out the unique answer, you'll say that this statement is not sufficient. So this was sufficient. I was getting a unique answer. The median was 9 in this case. In this case, I'm not getting an answer. So the correct answer in this case is going to be option A. Please let me know if you have any questions. No, Anubhav, all the questions are not OG questions. The mode question which I did was definitely an OG questions. The rest of them are unique questions. We created this on our own. Okay, let me bring up the yes or no poll quickly. Please mark yes, guys, if this is perfectly clear. Yes, Nico, this is between 650 to 700. I won't say this is 700 plus, but this definitely lies between 650 to 700 level. If you have any doubts, please feel free to ask. Ashish, it is hard, but you see, the purpose of these webinars is to show you how to do it. Please focus. I would request you to just understand the procedure of solving these questions, the way I'm doing it. You just need to replicate it. If you can replicate it, you can get the answers. The one thing which I've noticed is that people do this, solve these questions in a hurry. They do it very quickly. Like they might, as in your case, like you combine both these statements and ended up answering the answer. You might have ended up marking the answer as C or E, most probably. Chima, we got the answer from statement 1. No, the answer is option A. That's fine, Anubhav. If you found it easy, that's good. That's totally fine. Not a problem at all. No, I'm not neither an assumption nor a rule. Whenever you're given a statement, you need to ensure that you satisfy the condition that is given. Okay. you need to satisfy the condition. The condition says that the range needs to be 16. That means your greatest number, whatever your greatest number is, and whatever your smallest number is, that should be 16. This whenever you're given a statement, this statement you always have to consider as true. This is not going to change. You have to ensure that this happens. Now, the moment I make my n as 18 or 20, something like this, you'll notice that the greatest number becomes 20, the smallest is 1, and when you subtract the greatest minus smallest, you're getting 19, which is not equal to 16. You have to ensure that it is 16. So what I did was I inferred. So I inferred that n cannot take a value like 20, 25, 30, and so on and so forth. Okay, so it's not a rule or assumption, it's an inference. You have to infer it logically, saying that if I take any value which is say 18, 19, 20, then the range is going to exceed that. Okay, any other questions which I missed? Can n be equal to 10? For statement 1, obviously it cannot be equal to 10. Just to let you know, it's not possible. In the second case, if you want to take it as 10, you can definitely take it as 10. The range of 16 n could lie anywhere. So for statement 2, it's definitely possible to keep it as 10. Okay. Okay, guys, let's move on to the next question. Here's the next one. And let me bring up the poll quickly. For this one, I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to do it. So take your time and mark your answer in the poll. Okay, I'm ending the poll now, guys. So about 47% of you think the answer should be A. As far as I remember, it's A only, but we'll solve and see what is the correct answer. So this is the kind of question that I was talking about at the starting of the webinar. There are quite a few variations of it, and I kind of decided to take up this one to help you explain how to solve these kind of questions. There's a very good learning in this question regarding the nature of median. So let's understand how to solve such questions. Now, what it says is, again, I'm going to break down the information as I've told you. That's how I like to solve questions. Amy cuts a 495 centimeter long stick into maximum possible number of pieces such that each length is an integer. So the total length is 495 centimeter and each length is an integer. So if you want, you can even jot down this information because later on you don't want to go back to the question again. Each length is an integer, okay? The median length of the pieces is 60 centimeter. Okay, median length is 60. So you know there's 60 is the median and there are equal number of terms below and above it. Okay, number of terms. Okay, and the longest piece is 13 times the shortest piece of the stick. Okay, so there's a shortest stick here, there's a longest stick here. And since I don't have anything else, keep in mind whenever you don't have something to represent this information, just take a variable. So you can say, okay, let me take the smallest one as say A. So the highest one is going to be 13 times A. Okay, smallest is A, highest is 13 times A. Done. Now, if the longest piece is 195 centimeters, I'll pause here. I'll simply say, okay, that's very good. They're telling me 13A is 195. So if I want, let me jot that down. And if you want, you can even solve it, because that's a very easy calculation. It clearly shows it is 15. So you know this is 15 and you know this is 195. So you can plug that in. Okay. So if the longest piece is 195 centimeter and the stick is cut into odd number of pieces. Okay. So the number of pieces are odd. In fact, my bad, I actually assumed it. So the number, if there are odd number of terms, you can understand, right? If there are 5 terms, so the middle one is your median, and there are equal number of terms below and equal number of terms above it, right? This is what's happening. So 60 is here, and you can say there are say x terms below it. Okay, let me take it as n terms below it, n terms above. Okay, so you can say your total number of terms. Okay, this is the total length, by the way, total length. Okay, and total number of pieces. Total number of pieces is basically n, count the median, which is 1, and there are n terms above it. So total number of pieces are 2n plus 1. Okay. What are they asking me? They're asking me what is the average length of the pieces in centimeters. So I need to find out the average length. How do I find out the average length? And let me write it on top because that's what we are looking for. Average length would be equal to the total length, which is 495, divided by the number of pieces. How many pieces do I have? I have 2n plus 1 pieces. So this is what I'm looking for. Okay, everything from the question stem I've taken it, so I don't need to go back to it again. I just need to, I can simply infer that I need to find out how many terms are there. If I can find out how many terms are below and above it, I can get my answer. Okay, so I'll pause here for a moment again. Please let me know if this part is clear or not. Post that, I'll move on to the main analysis. Vipul, it's not possible, right, to have all pieces as 1 centimeter. The median is 60, then all of the pieces cannot be 1 centimeter. It says maximum possible number of pieces, but there are certain constraints given, Vipul. Okay, constraints like the median has to be 60, the smallest must be greater than the smallest, the highest, the longest is 30 times greater than the shortest. So I need to keep these constraints in mind and then decide what is the maximum possible number of pieces that I can get. Okay. Just because it simply says maximum possible number of pieces, I will not take it as 1. Why even take 1? People, we can take it as 0.5 also, right? Or 0.2 also, or 0.001, and keep on breaking it into. If I have to take it as an integer, then obviously 1. But if it's a non-integer, then it could be anything. So Nico, Vipul, is this part clear? I agree that it says maximum possible number of pieces, but there are certain constraints also, more information given about the pieces, which clearly tells us that I cannot have each one of them as 1 centimeter each. If I keep all of them as 1 centimeter, like 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 495 times, then how can the smallest be 13 times the greatest? Is it possible? This condition will not be met. How will the median be 60? That condition will also not be met. Okay, so I hope it's clear now why we should not take it as 1. Okay, Ashish, basically understand it in this way. If there are, in fact, let me explain the odd part here out here. So understand if there are odd number of terms, okay, let's say 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, say for example, and if you're finding out the median, if there are odd number of terms, which one will be your median? Total number of terms are 5. 5 plus 1 by 2. So your third term is going to be a median. And notice that if this is your median, then there are equal number of terms below it. There are 2 terms below it and 2 terms above it, right? Above the median and below the median. So if I have to find out total number of terms, what am I going to do? 2 terms below it, 2 terms above it, and 1 term is the median. So total number of terms turns out to be 5. Okay. Now in the question stem, I know that this is 60. I don't know how many terms are here. So I'm taking this as n terms. Okay, there are n terms out here. There are total n terms out here above it. Okay. So the total number of terms is going to be 60. Total number of terms is going to be n plus n and plus 1 term for the median. So the total number of terms is going to be 2n plus 1. I hope it's clear now. That's such a good question. Please understand n plus 1 by 2 or x plus 1 by 2, whatever you want to take. This tells you which term is your median. That does not tell you what is your median. And look at this example. N plus 1 by 2 told me that the third term is the median. It does not say that 3 is the median. So this tells us which term is the median. Okay. So I hope it's clear why we cannot do x plus 1 by 2 is equal to 60. If there are any more doubts, please feel free to ask. I don't see any more questions. Okay, guys, I don't see any more. So let me move on to the main chunk. Okay. Now, here's an interesting thing that you need to keep in mind whenever you're trying to maximize or minimize it. Okay. Whatever term that you have below the median, okay, whatever terms that are present below the median, they are either less or equal to the median. Okay, all the terms that are below the median, they're either less or equal to the median. That's one important part. And the second part is whatever terms that are there above the median, they're either greater or equal to median. Is this part clear, guys? And I can give you an example. Let's say, for example, and we have seen these examples, by the way, but I'm still taking a few of them. Say 11, take something like this, okay? If you can notice, let me take this as 10 also. So this would be a good example. Okay, take this case. How many terms are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 terms. So the median is going to be the fourth term. What is your fourth term? 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth term is going to be this. In fact, let me take this as 10 also. So notice, if I have 1, 2, 10, 10, 10, 10, 11, you can clearly notice that there are certain terms which are equal, that can be equal, and that there are certain terms that can be less than the median. If you look above it, you can see there are certain terms which are equal and certain terms which are greater than the median. Is this part clear? Again, let me bring up the yes and no. I'm going to take this a bit slowly because this is slightly tricky. So I want to make sure that you understand this properly. If this is clear, please mark yes very quickly. Yes, Ashish, you're correct. I'll come to that also. But I just want to make sure that you understand this part, that they have to be less than or equal to more than. Okay, this is clear. Okay. And obviously understand that if this is your smallest term, if this is your smallest term, then anything above it, anything which is above it will either be equal to, okay, or it has to be greater than. Okay, you cannot have 15 here and have a 14 here. That's not possible because you're arranging them in ascending order. Okay, so any term that the moment you move from left to right, you'll either have values which are either greater or you'll have values which are equal to the previous term. Okay, that's an important, these two things are really important to solve the question. Okay, now tell me one thing, and I think if you answer this question, you'll be able to solve this really easily. I want to maximize the possible number of pieces. Okay, I want to maximize the possible number of pieces. I know that these terms out here, they can either be less than or equal to 60, and they have to be greater than or equal to 15. So what would you prefer doing if you know that the length is fixed, you have 495, and you want to maximize the possible number of pieces? Would you want to put 15 for these remaining terms, or would you want to put 60 out here? What would you prefer doing, keeping in mind that you want to get maximum number of pieces? If you can answer this, the job is done. 15, right? It would be better if I make the part which are below it 15, smaller pieces, as small as possible. So if I want to make these as small as possible, I would want all of them to be 15. I cannot go below that. I have to keep it at least 15. So I prefer to keep it 16 so that I can get maximum number of pieces. Okay. Now let's look at terms which are above it. Okay. Now keep in mind that these terms that are here, they can either be 60 because greater than or equal to, or I can keep it equal to 195 also. I can keep it 195, 194, something like this. So what would I prefer doing? If I want to maximize it, would I want to cut them short pieces as 60, or would I cut a big stick of 195? What would I prefer doing on the other side? On this side, what would I prefer doing? Would I want to put 60s at all places so that I get maximum number of pieces, or do you want to put 195s here? 60, right? Because that would help me get maximum number of pieces. Okay, good, very good. So now I know these are these needs to be 60, these need to be 15. If I maintain this, then I can get maximum possible number of pieces. Okay, now how do I add this up? Now you have to add this up like this: 15, 15, 15, n times. Okay, there are n terms which are all 15. So I can say it would be, okay, I'm running out of space. So let me just rub this because now this is not needed. So I can simply say 15 times n, because there are 15 terms n times. So 15 times m plus. Notice that there's a 195. Out of these n terms, one of them is 195. So let me write down 195. This portion from here to here, these are n terms, right? So I can say 60 times n, 15 times n, 60 times n, plus 195. The sum of all these lengths should be equal to the sum of the length, which is 495. Okay, now you can solve this. You'll get 75n is equal to 300, or n is equal to 4. Once you get 4, you plug it here. 4 times 2 is 8 plus 1, 9, and you get your answer as 55. Please let me know if this is clear or not. So the concept when it comes to these questions, where you're maximizing or minimizing it, you have to always take into account these two conditions that the values that are present in between. And most of the questions would be asking you related to maxima minima would be making sure that these middle parts, how do you distribute them? That is what they're going to usually ask. So you have to be very clear that the value has to be less than or equal to the median and more than or equal to the smallest value. And that is how you distribute it here. In the second part that is above the median, either it would be greater than or equal to the median and less than the highest value. So you usually put in the, if you want to maximize it, you put it in this way. Again, Ashish, understand that this is not lengthy. I had to discuss to make you understand this. Okay, if you look at the number of steps, that I need to do, it is very less. This is all the information that I get from the question stem. Okay, this is obviously the part that you need to infer. This might take about a minute if you're taking your time to infer. This might take a time. Post that, this almost usually comes in the same way. Okay, so if you know how to distribute it, this might take you another 1 minute at the max. So you can easily solve this 700 plus level question in about 3 minutes easily. Some people can do it much more faster if they remember the distribution method quickly. They can solve it within 2 minutes also. But worst to worst case, you will be easily able to solve this within 3 minutes. In fact, if you want to practice more questions like this, I have a screenshot. If you can look at the booster files of stats. If you go to statistics, those of you who are students definitely can do that. You go to statistics, questions which are based on maxima, minima. In fact, those of you, some of you, if you want, you can take the screenshot of this question also. If you want to try it out, you can try this as home. It is again based on how you maximize the value, minimize the value. I'm not going to do this one, but I'm just telling you, if you want to know the solution, you can look at stats, booster 2. This is question number 4, which again talks about similar questions like this. Okay, so it would be a good practice for you. If you've understood this question, you should be able to solve the one that is given in the booster files. Yes, Anubhav, this is a 700 plus level question. Doris, if you try and solve it, 15n plus 60 plus 60n minus 60 plus 195, you would end up getting the same equation that I have. What you're writing is correct. There's no doubt about it, but it gives you the same result. The minus 60 and plus 60 would get cancelled out. Okay. Utsav has a question, can we divide 495 by the options and mark the answer, which is odd since number of... Utsav, you can do that also, but how would you know that you are getting the maximum number of pieces? What if you're getting 2 answer options which have the same result? What are you going to do then? If 2 results end up giving you odd in the exam time, again, I'm not doing it, I'm not trying to solve it, but I'm just saying this could be tricky by where you might end up getting 2 answers. So you'll have to again think what else you can do. I would not prefer doing it. Okay, any more questions? Okay, right, so let's do one last question on standard deviation, which is what we need is left to do. So here's the question, guys. And I'll give you, again, this one is also slightly tricky, but I'll give you 2.5 minutes to do this one. Yes, Anubhav, I never disagreed with the fact that all answers will not give different answers. I'm just saying that if both of them turn out to be odd, what should we do? Ashish, this is where we are going to cover standard deviation. Try out this question. I do have certain theory, which I'm going to cover post this question. Don't worry. So this is just one of the questions where I'm giving the question first and then doing the theory part, concept part. But let's say there was an option which gave you 15 as the answer in this one, the previous question. Would you and 13 and 15, both of them? Okay. Just giving a random example. Let's say after dividing 495, you end up getting there's an answer option. The number might be different, but let's say there's a number given to you of the length, and after dividing, you get 13 and 15. But 13 was the one where you were actually getting the answer. So just because one number is the factor of the original number, that doesn't mean that would give you the answer. So I hope you get my point. There could be an option where you have one of the option would be say 33. Okay, so when you divide 490 by 33, you end up getting 15. You might end up marking the answer as 15 when in fact the correct answer was something else. I think we got 4, right? We got 9 terms only or something like that. How much did we get in the previous one? And was what? N was 4, right? So we were getting 9. I could have given you an option which would have been 15. You would have ended up marking the answer as 15, which would have been incorrect. So there is a slight risk. Another 30 seconds, guys. Then I'm going to end the poll. Okay, guys, I'm ending the poll now. So let's start the discussion. Amna, keep in mind the statements. The statement 1 and 2 are always true. Always true. So whatever is given, they can never be false. So if it says that the last term of the sequence S is 19, then there is no shred of doubt that it could be anything else. It has to be 19. Okay, it cannot be anything else. If I say that the standard deviation of all the terms in the sequence is say 40, then we can be sure that it will always be 40 only, nothing else. Okay, so statements are always true. Okay, 63% of you mark the answer as C, which is good, and some of you mark the answer. 22% of you think that the answer should be A. So let's see which one would be the answer. But before that, let me talk about a concept here, because if you notice in this question, we are talking about a kind of a pattern, right? After the first term, so from the second term, each term is 2 more than the previous term. So this would like A plus 2, A plus 4, A plus 6. This is like a arithmetic progression where each term the difference is of 2 basically. Okay, so this is kind of a sequence. So you need to understand how the standard deviation works in such cases. And to understand the previous case, I'm going to first of all take the example of consecutive integers. If you understand this properly, the rest of the concept becomes really easy. Keep in mind that in GMAT, very, very rarely, in fact, I haven't seen any question where you have to use the formula as such. There's just 1 or 2 questions where they give you table and want to find out the standard deviation. Those kind of questions can also be done using observation. But if you know the formula, there's no harm in it, okay? So let's say I have given a question which asks you what is the standard deviation of 5 consecutive integers, okay? You don't need to solve it, I'm going to show it to you. So if I want to find out the standard deviation of 5 integer, what I basically do is I take 5 integers. Let me take it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Now to find the standard deviation, what we do is first of all find out the mean. I'm telling you the process also not very important. And if you want to know this in depth, again, you can look at stats video lessons 2. Stat video lesson 2 talks about this in detail if some of you are interested in knowing it. Now, once you find out the mean, the way you find out the standard deviation is, for those of you who want to know the formula, is basically you take the difference of the mean and each term. Okay, so 3 minus 1, and then you square it. So 3 minus 1 whole square, 3 minus 2 whole square, 3 minus 4 whole square, and 3 minus 5 whole square. Okay, and then you divide it by the number of terms. So if you have 5 terms, you divide it by 5. So 3 minus 1 is 2 square. So you can see I've written 2 square. In fact, I missed 3 minus 3 square. My bad. There would be a 3 minus 3 square also. Basically, you subtract the term. Subtract this, 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 and take the square. Okay. And once you do it, notice that the standard deviation that you're getting is root 2. Okay. Now, tell me, if I change the numbers, to say 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, again, I'm taking 5 consecutive integers. Can anyone tell me, will the standard deviation change? Will the answer be something else? Will it not be root 2? Will it be, if since the numbers are huge, will the standard deviation would be something else like root 4, root 10, root 15? What is it going to be? Anyone? Okay, Ashish says SD will remain the same. Same answer, same. Vaishnavi says no. Anubhav says it will not change. Yes, correct. The standard deviation will not change. Okay, and I'm showing it to you. Let's say in this case the mean would be 15. Now, when you take the difference, notice an interesting pattern. 15 minus 13 is again 2. 15 minus 14 is 1. 15 minus 15 is 0. 15 minus 16 is again 1. 15 minus 17 is again 2. So at the end of the day, the standard deviation still remains root 2. Okay, so the major learning out here is that the standard deviation for any n consecutive integer is going to remain the same. When I say n, n could be anything. So let's say if I give you 6 consecutive integers, obviously the answer would be different. The standard deviation won't be root 2, but for any 6 consecutive integers, the value is still going to remain the same. In fact, I've shown an example here also. So I'm taking a case of 4 instead of 6. I've taken a case of 4. Notice if I take 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, I find out the mean is going to be 2.5. I found the standard deviation. The process is same. You can look at it later on, but I've done the same thing. I've subtracted it and squared it. I get 1.25, square root of 1.25. And if I do the same process for say another 13, 14, 15, 16, 4 numbers, though the mean is different, the standard deviation is not going to change. So the learning that you need to keep in mind is that in case of consecutive integers, the standard deviation does not depend on the value of the integer, does not. As long as you're dealing with say 5 consecutive integers, any 5 consecutive integers, the standard deviation is going to remain root 2 only. It's not going to change. Okay, as long as you're dealing with any 4 consecutive integers, it does not matter what 4 consecutive integers are, the standard deviation value is going to be the same. Obviously, these two are going to be different, obviously. These won't be the same, but for any 4, the value is always going to remain 1.2, square root of 1.25. Okay, is this part clear, everyone? Please mark yes if this is clear. Okay, I can see it's clear to most all of you are saying yes. So this concept of consecutive integers, now understand consecutive integers are numbers which have a difference of 1, right? The difference between them is of 1. The same concept can be extended for arithmetic progression also, where the common difference remains the same. Okay, you know the terms are like this: a plus d, a plus 2d, a plus 3d. The difference is always of d, where d is the common difference, by the way. So those of you who haven't done arithmetic progression, okay. So in such cases also, the standard deviation pattern follows the same logic. So for example, if I have an AP, okay, in which the difference of any terms is 2, any two difference. So the common difference, the d that you have is 2, okay, and it consists of 5 terms. Keep in mind, it does not matter what those 5 terms are. And I'm showing you an example. Let's say take this case: 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. All of them have a difference of 2, right? If you find their mean, the mean would be 6. If you find the standard deviation, it will come out to be as root 8. Okay. Take another case also. I've taken here 3, 5, 7, 9. Okay. Notice again the differences of 2. Find their mean. Find the standard deviation. You'll notice the standard deviation does not change. Okay. So keep this in mind that in case of arithmetic progression also, if I know that the common difference, okay, and in fact you can do it in a generic way also. You'll still get the same answer: a plus 2, a plus 4, a plus 6, a plus 8. A better way to understand it like this: I don't know the value of a, for example. I don't know what the first term is. My mean in this case is going to be a plus 4, and then when I'm finding the standard deviation, notice a plus 4 minus a would give me 4 square. There's a difference of 2, 2 square. There's a difference of 0, 0 square. There's a difference of again 2, 2 square, 4 square. Notice the same thing which I got here: 4 square, 2 square, 0 square, 2 square, 4 square. I've got the same result here, and I need to divide by 5. So the term does not make any difference at all. If the common difference is 2, then the standard deviation is going to remain the same. Okay, and vice versa also. So keep in mind, if somebody tells you that the common difference is say 2, and they don't tell me the number of terms, they don't tell me this, okay, this is missing, and they tell me that the standard deviation is root 8. If they give me this information, the common difference information and the standard deviation information, I can automatically figure out how many terms it would be. Okay, I might have to do hit and trial or whatever, but I can find out the number of terms. That is the learning that you need to keep in mind. Please let me know if this part is clear. If this is clear, then the question is a piece of cake. We'll be able to solve it very quickly. Yes, Ashish, I just noticed your chat. Yes, if the standard deviation is 0, that means all numbers are same. Okay, great. I can see it. Everyone has understood this. So now notice, and I want to start from the second statement. Okay, I'll come to the first statement because I've been discussing this. I want to make sure that I cover this part first. Notice standard deviation of root 40 is given. Okay, I've been also told that each term is 2 more than the previous term. Okay, so this information also given to me. So if I know the common difference is 2, I know the terms are like this: a plus 2, a plus 4, a plus 6, blah, 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 blah. And the standard deviation in this case is root 40. And keep in mind, this is a data sufficiency question. And I've already told you that GMAT does not test you on formulas. What it would want you to do is, when you're analyzing the statement, it will test you whether you can make the inference, whether you can draw the inference. What can you find out from this information that is given to you? And I already told you that if you know the common difference, if you know the standard deviation, you can figure out how many terms are there in the sequence. Okay, so with this knowledge, all you had to do is, you didn't even have to try, you don't have to figure out how many terms are there. You don't need to do that. You just need to say that, okay, I will be able to figure out the number of terms. So I'll know how many terms are there. Okay, whether it's 5, 7, 10, you don't need to bother about it. Just say that you know the number of terms. That's enough. That's the inference you need to make. Okay. Now the question is, we need to find out the first term. Okay, just knowing how many terms are there obviously cannot help you get the answer. So obviously statement 2 is not sufficient. Some of you marked the answer as A. Now understand, if my last term is 19, okay, and there are other terms before it, don't think that you can find out the first term. How do you know what the first term would be? Is it given anywhere that the terms are positive or negative? No information is given. You just know that this is 17, 15, 13, you know, and you are going on like this. But till which point are you going? How would you know? Are you getting my point? So those of you who marked A, I hope you understand what the mistake is. Nowhere is it given that the terms are positive. So that does not mean that you'll stop somewhere. The moment you get a value which is non-positive, you need to stop. That's not going to happen. Don't stop here. It could have gone beyond that. You don't know. So statement 1 alone is not sufficient. But if you combine it, if you know that there are 7 terms, say for example, I don't know how many are there. I'm not going to find that out. But let's just say I know that there are 7 terms. Then I can subtract 2 7 times, and I can reach the term which would be hypothetically my first term. Okay, so only when you combine it, only when you know what the last term is. By the way, there's a formula also. I did not go into it because I don't know how many of you know the formula of the first term and last term. You could have also used this. Last term is 19. A is your first term. If I know the number of terms I can get from statement 2, okay, whatever the number of terms it, I'll plug it here. I know my common difference is 2. So I will be able to figure out the value of A. So you can do it like this also. This was just for the purpose of visualization. Okay. So once I know the last term, which is 19, once I know N from the second statement, I can find my answer. So the correct answer in this case is going to be option C. Please let me know, guys, if this is clear or not. I'm ending the poll and adding a new one. Please mark yes if this is clear. In fact, oh, I just noticed my presentation stopped. Okay. So guys, this is the end of the this webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Can you repeat how you got the total number of terms if I have the SD? See, if you know, as I told you before, that if I know there are 5 terms, like for example, I give you the example of this, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And say 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. These are the 5 terms that are given to you. Okay. The standard deviation for these 5 terms and the standard deviation for these 5 terms, they were both the same. Remember? I think the value was something root 8 or something like that. Whatever it be, doesn't matter. The point is that the standard deviation for both of them remains the same. Okay, and it's going to be unique. So if I'm given this, if I'm given that this is 40, then I can very easily figure out how many terms do I have. Okay, so if I am given the terms, I can find out the standard deviation. If I know the standard deviation, I can figure out how many terms are there, because the standard deviation is unique for any number of terms that are there. Okay, so if I know that the common difference is 2, I can easily figure out what would be the standard deviation in that case. And since I know the standard deviation, the statement 2 did tell me that the standard deviation is root 40. I can figure out how many terms would I need to get root 40. So it's like this: a plus 2, a plus 4, something like this. It's going like this. So you need to figure out how many terms would you need, and you can figure out till where you need to go to get root 40. Again, you don't need to solve it. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You can manually solve, create a case and try and figure out how many would you need, but that is not needed. You just need to say that through some hit and trial, I can figure out how many terms should be there to get the standard deviation as root 40, because that's unique for a particular number of terms. You won't get root 40 for 2 different number of terms where the common difference is 2. Amna, statement 1 is not sufficient. It's a finite sequence, but where do I start and end it? I don't know, right? Whether it has 10 number of terms or 15 number of terms or 14 number of terms, that is something which we don't know. Yes, exactly, Nitin. That is what you need to infer, that if I know root 40, you can do hit and trial and figure out how many terms would be there to get root 40. You don't need to actually solve it. So you don't need to actually go and check cases like this. Okay, you don't have to draw and see, okay, 2 square, 4 square, where should I go? You don't have to check it. You can figure out. If you do a little bit of hit and trial, you will be figure out how many terms would you need. But that is not the purpose, and that is why specifically, if you keep in notice that these kind of questions would come always in the form of data sufficiency. Because GMAT will not want you to use the formula of standard deviation. They won't want you. They would just want you to they would just want to test whether you can apply this for whether you can make this inference or not. That's all. So all you need to keep in mind is that if you know the standard deviation, and if you also know what's the difference between the terms, whether they are consecutive integers, whether they're AP, and if it's AP, what's the common difference? If you know these two information, you can always find out the number of terms. Okay. Any other question, guys? Please feel free to ask. Okay, Daksha, that's a good question. See, as I told you that I haven't seen any question where you have to actually use the formula. There are certain places where if you use the formula, it will make your life easy. So there are tabular questions where they give you data in 5 different columns, and they ask you which one would have the highest standard deviation. Okay. In those kind of cases, if you know the formula, you can very quickly find it out. But those questions can also be solved using observation also. Okay, so not necessary. But if you know it, it can save some time. Okay, Amna, from the second statement, you just get to know the number of terms. Okay, there were two statements, statement 1, statement 2. This was just telling me the number of terms. Okay, whatever that term would be. Let's say, for example, let's say 10. Say, I'm giving a hypothetical example, 10 number of terms. They were asking you what is the first term. How can you get the answer of the first term by just knowing the number of terms? You cannot find that out, right? So statement 2 alone cannot be sufficient. You know the common difference is 2. So if there are 10 terms, then you know that it can be written like this: a plus 2, a plus 4, a plus 6, a plus 8, a plus 10, so on and so forth, 10 terms. But how would you find a? You'll be able to find a only when you know what the last term is, right? When you know the last term is, say, 19, then you can equate this with whatever is the last term, whatever that turns out to be. You can use that and then get your answer. Okay, I hope that answers your query, Amna. Any other questions, guys? Anything related to you can still ask questions related to this question, but apart from that, if you have any other questions related to quant prep or GMAT prep, this is the right time to ask. I'll be there for about 5-10 minutes more, so feel free to ask any question that you want to. And as you can see on the screen, we've also given a number of our phone number and our support. If you have any questions regarding this webinar, or in general, if you want to know about anything about GMAT, was also feel free to ask, guys. For those of you who want to, want to know more about the course of GMAT I'm also sharing the Calendly link. If you want to work with us, if you want to figure out how we can help you prepare for GMAT, then feel free to book a session with us using this Calendly link that I've shared. I'm broadcasting it, so you should be able to see it. Okay. Uh, Glad you liked it, Muniba. What? Okay, I can see a few questions very quickly. Let me answer them. Ashish, what to prepare for GMAT section part that I need to Ashish, that's a very open-ended question. There are a lot of things that you need to memorize, by the way. In fact, there are a lot of formulas that are there in 3D, in triangles. Triangles is 30, 60, 90, 45, 45, 90, isosceles, equilateral, all the formulas about volumes and cubes of, the 3D figures. You need to know the formula about circles, all the angle properties, area properties. You need to know all the diagonal properties, area, length properties of quadrilaterals. So there are a lot of things that you need to learn. If you are using our course, then obviously all of these are given in our course very properly in a sequentially manner. If you are not, then that it's very difficult to list down everything. But at a high level, any formula that is tested in the GMAT, you need to go through them. Arsh, mocks Veritas or Manhattan. Okay, if you want. Ideally, I would recommend, if you want to choose only between these two, then I would say you can look at Veritas mocks if you want to. But we do have our own mocks also. GMATWiz also has mocks. If you want to use GMATWiz mocks also, you can use it. Okay. But if you specifically want to choose between Veritas and Manhattan, my personal preference is Veritas, by the way. You're welcome, everyone. Glad to see that you like this session. Amna, I am not sure what you mean by can you share a simpler version of answer choices. In fact, if you can elaborate a bit more, what do you mean by simpler version? I can maybe help you out. Okay. See, as far as Veritas is concerned, I think their prediction is slightly more closer. Question level wise, I think both of them are at par. But prediction wise, most of in my experience and most of the students that have reported it, I found it much more closer to the actual exam. What I would recommend is, if you want, to figure out which one suits you more, they both offer a free mock, one each. You can try both of them. I'm sure you'll understand the difference between both of it. But if the reason if you're asking for is mostly because it's much more accurate, slightly more accurate, is how I'll put it. But if you're looking for more recommendations, or Arsh, like say for example, what to do next, what topics you need to prepare, what are your strengths or weaknesses in those things, those kind of in-depth analysis, I'm not sure you'll get either at Veritas or Manhattan. That I'm letting you know now only. These are something which only we provide at this point of time. So if you haven't used a free mock yet, so we do provide one free mock. I would recommend trying that out. Because at the end of the day, and it's for everyone, by the way, at the end of the day, if you take a mock, I feel the major challenge that most of these students face is what to do next, or how do I analyze my mock, or what kind of mistakes do I make, or where did I exactly make mistake, or what are the topics that I could have scored in which I couldn't. What are the topics where I need to practice questions from, or what are the topics that I need to revise from? Those kind of information is left for the student to figure out on their own. Okay, and those are the kind of insights we just give provided directly. You don't have to do any analysis at all. Obviously, you can do your own analysis, but we literally give that to you post once you complete a mock. So if you're looking for a mock which gives you suggestions also on what to do next, I would recommend looking at GMATWiz. You're welcome, Mohammed. Okay, guys, I'm there for another 5 minutes and then I'm going to end the session. So if there are any more questions, please feel free to ask. Once again, I've shared the Calendly link in case you want to know more about the course. Feel free to, book a session with us and we can let you know how we can help. Okay. Okay, I don't see any more questions, so I'm ending the poll. All the best, guys. Bye.